So thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to introduce our panelists and then Brooke Hester is going to take it away with some questions for y'all. As a woman in STEM, we thought she would provide a great perspective. So again, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Laura Pell. I'm the career coach for the College of Arts and Sciences. So any of you STEM majors out there, I'm probably your career coach. So if I haven't met you before, nice to meet you, and definitely let us know if there's any way we can support. On the panel today, I want to first introduce Nickie Cashdollar. Nickie is a sustainability lead at a really cool company called AppHarvest. Nickie, would you like to tell us a little bit more about you and your role with AppHarvest?
Sure, thanks so much for the introduction, Laura. It's nice to meet everyone. So I'm Nickie Cashdollar, and I've been with the company AppHarvest for over 2 years now, which is significant because the company is only about 2.5 years old. So AppHarvest is, simply put, a greenhouse company, but we're using today's technology and combining it with traditional agriculture techniques to combine for a whole new sector. So we went from being a startup to this past Monday being listed officially through our SPAC process. So we're now a public company. And at that, we are a public benefit corporation. So we're also a certified B Corporation as well. But essentially, we build really large greenhouses that have lots of technology in them, no soil, water recycling, no chemical pesticides, and a bunch of different growing practices that are better for the environment. And we ship those out to your everyday grocery store, like Walmart and Kroger and things like that. Traditionally, those, say, tomatoes or cucumbers or lettuce, things like that, are grown in a drier region that is really difficult to maintain. Often there's unfair labor practices. So that's another reason that we're really intentional about building these greenhouses in Appalachian counties, trying to bring well-paying jobs to the hardworking people that live there. And so there's a whole story to tell, but my role specifically is in the sustainability sector. And there's lots of really great sustainability wins, but my job on a daily basis kind of lies in the difficulties that we face. So we can grow 365 days a year, but we use supplemental lighting to make sure that the tomatoes can get a little extra light at night, right? So let's make sure that we bring renewable energy instead of brown power or something like that. So my everyday involves different things like that. I work with our new Chief Sustainability Officer, Jackie Roberts. I'll probably come back to her later, but if you're looking for a sustainability icon, that is her. She's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, my role in the company has transitioned over the 2 years that I've been there. Obviously, we've been going through a lot, but we do have 2 new construction sites. Our first is actually bringing out tomatoes in Moorhead, Kentucky. That's a 60-acre greenhouse facility. And then we have 2 additional sites under construction in Richmond and Berea. And then we've also publicly promised by 2025 to have about 10 more facilities up and running. So it's a really fast-growing company. I'm really happy to be a part of it. And I'm happy to talk about other sustainability things when we get later into the discussion.
Thanks, Nickie. Nice to meet you, and thanks for joining us. Up next, we have Maggie Seeds, who is a graduate from App State, which is always exciting, and works for Clarkston Consulting currently as business and technology consultant. Maggie, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I went to App State. I played volleyball and was in the physics department. I studied physics and astronomy, as well as minors in math and Spanish. And doing my internship, I worked with Dr. Gray, and we were studying young solar analogs and doing spectroscopy and some cool stuff. I realized that I didn't love sitting in the lab alone at night. And so started trying to think about what other sorts of careers I could get into with that background. I loved working through long problems, all of that logical, critical thinking. I enjoy that type of work, but wanted to do something that felt the benefit a little bit quicker, a bit more immediate, and seeing results and working with other people. So I went into consulting. Clarkston is based in Raleigh-Durham. That's where our corporate office is, but we've got consultants all over the country. And consulting is a little weird. You travel every week to your client site typically. So I've been there for almost 9 years since school. And for the first 6 years, I was traveling every week. So wherever my client site was, I would fly out early Monday, be there all week, and then leave Thursday and work from home on Fridays. The past couple of years, I've been trying to shift out of that. I don't personally think it's sustainable for me long term, or at least not right now. So I've been getting into more remote work, in advance of all of us having to do remote work the last year or so. But yeah, so I've done software implementation with Clarkston, and as well as in the last 4 years or so, I switched and pivoted into more of a data science space. So it's very cool. I work with like machine learning and a little bit of AI, trying to help companies understand how to use analytics. I think analytics is very buzzy. Everybody wants to do something with analytics, but we try to help them understand, okay, what should you be doing? What can you be doing? What sorts of questions are you trying to ask? And then we'll help you design solutions around those questions so that you're not just doing it for the sake of it, is a lot of what we focus on. So yeah, excited to talk all things data and analytics, consulting, questions about career, as well as we work in the consumer products and life sciences areas primarily. So food and beverage, clothing, consumer products type stuff, as well as med device, pharma, bio, generics, over-the-counter drug, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Excited to learn more. Next, we have Murphy, who is also a grad from App State and is currently working for Fast Enterprises, which is as a software engineer. Murphy, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I went to App State for undergrad and grad school. So I got my undergrad in exercise science, my grad degree in engineering physics, which is kind of an unorthodox path, but I just kind of followed the things that I really liked in exercise science, and it landed me in physics, and engineering physics somehow led me to, like, the software aspect of it was really intriguing to me, so I just went for that. And yeah, so I've been working for Fast excuse me, for 2.5 years now. I've been in Alaska working for them, so they move their employees to the site of the client. So I've been up in Alaska, kind of living my best life. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting job. And even though it's revenue software, it's an interesting job. And I've really enjoyed it. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Murphy. And thanks for getting up early for us.
Yeah, you guys got me out of bed early this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Cool. So Brooke Hester, Dr. Brooke Hester from the physics department, is a professor here at App State. If you haven't met Brooke already, it's going to take it away from here. Brooke, have at it with your questions.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces from the past and the present. I am so honored to be able to ask questions of our panel today. And I think we should just go in the same order as before. Nikki, Maggie, Murphy, let's just answer questions in that order. And the first question that I want to ask is kind of a two-part. There are probably ways that you prepared for your current career as a student or, as a person before you got your job. And so there are maybe some ways you did that intentionally and then also unintentionally. So can you tell us about both, some unintentional and intentional ways you prepared for your current career?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of explain. The first thing that I like to share with everyone is that I have a degree from the University of Kentucky in marketing, and I actually graduated in 3 years. So my degree in terms of what I do specifically at AppHarvest is minimally helpful. And so a lot of my preparation came from internships and projects that I took on there. So after you have say one class project or one internship where you did something in a specific field, if you're intentional about that, that can be the thing that you talk about for an hour, right? So it all depends on how you kind of frame your experiences. And so that's what I did, is I took what I really liked and what I really thought was going to be something that I enjoyed in the future and made that kind of my center trajectory. So that was more of the intentional piece. And then the unintentional piece came from educating myself outside of the classroom. So I just really started to listen to a lot of podcasts about entrepreneurship and started reading random research journals that I found interesting, summaries there. And then when you start talking about that or start doing that stuff in your personal life, you might talk to a friend about it, and then a friend knows somebody. And so unintentionally, you develop this conversation about sustainability and things that you care about. And then you create a new network for yourself completely outside of anything professional that you're trying to do in the classroom or through internships or things like that. So I have to say that my biggest preparation came from outside of the classroom just because of my unique trajectory in STEM. And so as long as you kind of identify your passion and take steps towards it, I don't think there's a specific like pathway that you have to follow necessarily to make that happen for yourself.
Yeah, our company talks about, there's lots of analogies, I'm sure, but we've talked about like a rock climbing wall where your trajectory is not going to be typically a linear path A to B. It's going to be, you know, pick up a skill here and then use that to pivot or have a conversation or learn what someone else does and kind of treat it as more of a rock wall where you can move side to side all over the place really, and maybe even down in order to go back up. So that's helpful, Nikki, thanks. I'd say, so coming out of App with my bachelor's degree, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad, who's nearing retirement, always jokes that he still talks about what he wants to do when he grows up. So I think that I'm always jealous of people who have known that they wanted to be a doctor or a dancer or whatever it is their whole lives. I admire that passion, but I think a lot of us find ourselves in this, I don't know, I'm good at some things, I enjoy some things, but work is work. What do I do? And so consulting for me was a good way to try a bunch of different things. And so I did that pretty intentionally of, okay, I'll travel a little bit, I'll see different work environments, I'll see, you know, big corporate companies and how they work. I'll get a taste though of my smaller company that really values us. I think Nikki's similar to, you can talk more about your startup experience, but Clarkston's smaller and I feel really valued, and like there's a lot of support for professional development, which I've found has been really important to my happiness at work and fulfillment. So getting a taste of different things. And I know I have a lot of friends who've done rotational programs and things. It sounds like Murphy's, you know, out in Alaska. I think there's lots of different types of things you can do. So consider that when you're looking at career path, is trying different things out. And I'd say unintentionally, I pivoted from being in software development to getting more into data on a project. So I was on a project for 3 years. That was my longest one so far. And about a year and a half in, it was kind of getting old. I was just kind of going through the motions. And so there was a vacancy on another team and I said, yeah, I'll try it. And I ended up loving it, and getting into the data side of things, you know, really opened my eyes to, wow, I like this a lot more for various reasons. And so I think just trying new things out, asking people to lunch or get a coffee, asking what they do, attending these types of things, just learning what opportunities are out there will help a lot.
I guess for me, in terms of practical training, I put my all into grad school. And so it was head down, do the best that I can, really, really try my hardest because I'm really interested in it. For the first time, really, in undergrad, I just picked a major and went with it, and the interest wasn't there. So once I found that like driving force of like solving problems, and even if there are problems with some computer language that I just will never understand, I still felt compelled to like try to get it. And so the software part was easy for me in terms of, I know I want to find a job in that. But what I kind of prepared for it, I guess without kind of realizing that I was preparing, was just kind of talking about it with people and talking in front of people and kind of showing that charisma with someone that doesn't understand what I'm talking about and just relaying what I've learned. And so now with my job, which was not something that I was looking for, was the consultant half of my job, which is where I go. That's why I'm in Alaska, is I'm sitting next to the client. Well, not now, I'm working from home, but I was sitting next to the client and I was talking to them and I'm explaining the project and what we're working on and what the goal is going to look like. And so in grad school, I really kind of put myself out there, first jumping into this brand new thing that I wasn't really prepared for. I didn't feel prepared for. And then secondly, talking about my work and really experiencing like that anxiety and that fear of talking in front of groups and stuff like that. Really, I use it every day now. I'm on video chats every day talking with the client and explaining processes that are complicated. And yeah, I this question kind of triggered that in me. I didn't realize that I was prepared for it, because my first day I had to do it. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting, making me think, Dr. Hester.
Still making you think. Thank you so much for your answers. That was great. So we want to take a slight turn with the questions and bring up the elephant in the room. Women in STEM, right? We are all women in STEM. Well, maybe not all in STEM, but women. But we want to hear specifically about challenges you faced as a woman in your career, as a student, as a where you are in your position now. If you have a specific story, that would be amazing. But however you can tell us how you've overcome the challenges that we know are there, it would be great.
So I'm still fairly new into my career when I look to my mentors and things like that. So I'll speak specifically to my boss again, Jackie Roberts, and some of the experiences that I have seen. So she's a very seasoned professional, and she really knows how to communicate with just about anybody. If somebody is trying to mansplain something to her, she knows how to deal with it. If someone is very stressed out and taking it out on someone inappropriately, maybe just they had something going on at home and that's just how it came out at work, she knows how to handle it. So I have mentally taken some notes about the ways that she handles things. The first is that when she knows something, she will interrupt the person that's talking to her and say, "Oh yes, I have lots of experience in that." Or she'll say, "Oh yeah, we don't have to go into that. Actually, I already understand it," and things like that. So your time is valuable. Make sure you take control of it and don't let somebody mansplain something to you, whether it's a man or a woman. Make sure that you know your worth and you have knowledge. And that kind of leads into my second thing is, on my end, I'm in a lot of conversations when I don't know all of the information. I'll tell you what really gets me is acronyms. I try and memorize all the acronyms, but there's always more that I don't know. And I'm Googling, like right now it's great because I can just do a quick little Google, but in real life, I'm like, yes, the TTPDC, you know, of course I know what that is. But if you don't actually know it, you feel immediately left out, immediately like you're not qualified, right? So people say knowledge is power, but I think knowledge is confidence. The most research that you can do before a phone call, in the early stages of conversations with someone or in your career, that's what's really given me the confidence to say, it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, I'm the smartest person in this room. Or if you've been working really hard on a project, your confidence will come through if you know those things. And then another thing I wanted to share is when I was beginning my career and trying to figure out all the people that I really looked up to, and specifically women, how they got to where they are. And LinkedIn was my best tool there. Not that I was connecting with anyone. I would just look up someone in a role that I thought was exciting, or look up someone that I had heard about, and I looked at their education experience and their job experience. And you'll find that you're on a lot of parallel paths with the people that you really look up to. Right. So maybe you don't have the 20 years of experience that they do, But if you look at where they were when they were 20 years old or 30 years old or things like that, you're doing exactly what they're doing. You're setting yourself up for success. And then that confidence, I think, brews in you, you know, of like, I'm on a path to be an absolute rock star. So some of it I try and pick up myself. Some of it people have taught me, but you just have to know your confidence and know your own worth. And that takes a little bit of getting used to. And I also think that we should just talk about it more, like ask the question that we're asking right now, talk about the fact that, did you feel like we were being talked to a little bit like inappropriately or something like that? It's happened very minimally to me, but when it does come up, nip it in the butt so that people know that you're talking business. So I was really excited to talk about that because it's unfortunately one of the main things we have to deal with on a daily basis.
That was awesome. Thanks, Nikki. I think, so one story that comes to mind was I was applying for a scholarship my final year of school, and we were doing interviews, and I left the interview and I came back into Dr. Burris's office, if anybody knows her, or classroom for class, and she was like, how'd it go? And I was like, I think it went well, but he said something kind of weird at the end. It was an older guy, kind of like finance. I think it was from like a law firm that was giving the scholarship. And he said twice in the interview, you're smarter than you look. And I was just like, I wanted the thing. So I just brushed it off and laughed it off and was like, oh, like, okay. And Dr. Burris was furious and like wanted to send an email and make it a whole thing. But I was like, no, I want the scholarship. Like, just leave it. And it was kind of a realization that even though there was only one other woman in my year of the physics program, which, lower on the gender representation, but like so many of the professors in the program are female. And so I don't know, I just had so many great women to look up to in the department who it hadn't really fazed me to be judged like that in my professional, academic professional environment in that way yet. And I was kind of like, whoa. And I was just appreciative that so many of the women in the department took it seriously and kind of were in my corner and like really backed me up in that moment. That's not how I should be spoken to or treated. And so that was a good, you have women around you. And so I think when looking for a workplace and when looking for, a department or whatever it is that you're seeking, pay attention to those things. Pay attention to how people treat you when you're interviewing and what their, outreach programs look like and what their, what the diversity makeup is and what their commitment is to things that you care about. I think aligning with those things, some things might be stepping stones in your career, but aligning with those things where you're going to spend so much of your time is really important. And just to have that support and trust of the people around you that they're going to have your back, I think is majorly important. So that was kind of an ugly realization, but also something I was grateful to have a good network in that moment.
Maggie, I was just going to add to that same situation. After you're so intentional about choosing where you work and you feel like it's a great place, right? You still have to collaborate with other companies and people outside of their organization. And no matter how intentional you can be, that sometimes just happens. And so I think, Maggie, what you talked about in terms of surrounding yourself with people that have that reality check with you is like, did that really just happen? Sometimes there's nothing that you can do about it. You've got a contract with somebody or it didn't like hit the exact like sexual harassment clause or something like that. But to have people around you to acknowledge that, even if you pick the perfect setting, I think that's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just speaking up for what you believe in and what you want. Most companies and most organizations have, just because something doesn't exist yet doesn't mean you shouldn't go start it. If you want to have an enterprise resource group, ERG is one of those acronyms, is something that's pretty common. So maybe there's like a mother's ERG or there's all sorts of different groups, but they were started at some point by someone. So if you have something you're passionate about and you feel like you need a better network, look around and ask like, hey, is this something anybody else wants to like couple up on or start in a small, in a small way and see where it goes. Can be, if you don't see your network, then build it.
Let's see. Okay, so I think for me at least, I've been working this job for over 2 years now. But when I think back to being brand new, it's hard for me to discern between being new and being a woman. And it's kind of like are they treating me this way because I am a newbie and they're like trying to guide me, or are they treating me this way because I'm a woman? And so now that I've been in this job for a couple of years, I think the bias is what's left because I'm not new anymore. You know, you can't talk to me like I'm a child or whatever it is, because there's no excuse. There's nothing that you can hide behind now. And so that kind of brought me to this story where I've started training new people on our site. We don't get very many new people, but when we do have interns or new people come, I train them. And recently we got this new guy who's older. The demographic for our company is very young, is fresh out of college mostly, and so this guy was kind of a different sort of newbie where he was in his 40s, and I don't know, he had this arrogance about him that kind of rubbed me the wrong way initially. But that aside, it kind of felt like I was being dismissed and I was the one doing the training. So it was hard for me to combat that initially. I wasn't used to, I'm explaining this process that you're gonna need to understand, and being just kind of shoved off, I guess. And so he would keep doing that and then asked other people to explain the process, other people being men, because I'm the only girl on site. And so that kept happening. And then eventually I just kind of started to get fed up with it and became more assertive and asked him to take notes and asked him to answer questions and kind of just put him on the spot. And it put him in his place, which was weird for me to have to do. I've never, I guess, kind of like what Maggie was saying, I've always felt very safe at App in terms of like having people and strong women to go to either even just commiserate with, but also be there for you if it's a serious matter. And so, yeah, being the only girl on my team, I didn't have that. I didn't have, did you hear that? Like, did you see what he just said? I didn't have that. So what I had instead was that mentality of I'm not gonna be steamrolled anymore. And I mean, that's the only example that I can think of, because I do have a really, like, the people I work with are really easy to get along with and are really nice. This was just this one guy that I kind of had to stick my elbow into just to be like, no, this is my space. Yeah, you're a big guy, I get it, but no, move over. Like, this is my space. I belong here. So yeah.
Thank you so much. These were such great examples and stories to share. I appreciate it so much. You're being candid with us. I'm learning a lot today. Okay, so the next question, kind of back to our previous ones. If you could go back and be a student, or think back to when you were a student, what is something you wish someone had told you or taught you that you didn't learn or talk about before you got to your current position that you wish you had known?
I think that's such a specific question to what type of field each of us is in, and I'll try and do some specifics for myself, but then also just in school settings and things like that. I think one of the largest things that I wish I was taught is the value of projects and internships and things like that, because I haven't really discussed coursework, like a test. I've never discussed a specific like lecture that I talked about. It was always the collaborative experiences or the projects where I had an end result that ended up being something that I thought was the most valuable in terms of my skill set. So if I was in a project about sustainability and we're learning about the different environmental impacts, all that stuff is great and it gives you a lot of knowledge. But what I really want to talk about is my final project about forest restoration or something like that, where I really dug in myself and had an analysis at the end to show and to talk about. So I think that coursework is sometimes undervalued. And I think I always knew that internships were really valuable, but the specific projects and individuality that you can take out of internships as well. So if they're just giving you a project to kind of go along with, and you don't feel like you're able to take ownership of that, it's always great to show an extra sense of initiative so that you can actually have something that you started from beginning to end, an issue that you solved, data that you're able to present as this is something that I was able to add to the team. And so in that way, you kind of get to take responsibility and ownership for those different types of things. I also wish that everybody had told me how different your trajectory is going to be. I go back to the LinkedIn suggestion is if you just look at who you want to be or who really inspires you, you just have no idea what's coming, right? What your current like major is and compared to what your career is going to be, or even how long you'll stay at a company. It's so uncommon now to stay at a company for more than a couple years after you graduate. And so when you're moving around so frequently, you're often changing trajectory, like Maggie talked about, not even intentionally, just like you're looking for something new and something challenging. So do as much as you can to diversify and educate yourself while you're still in school. And then I always say the biggest thing is stuff outside the classroom, just to learn about contextual things, what's going on in the economy, what's changed in politics, what is the new company that's out there that's inventing new things, because it's always inspiring to me to be able to contextualize what I'm doing on a daily basis to what else is going on in the world.
Yeah, those are good. I was going to say internships as well. I did one. I worked on a space grant while I was in college, and that was really my only experience. And who knows, maybe I would have, if I had pursued other kind of more project related things, I could have seen other sides of things you can do by going to grad school and getting a PhD that might have intrigued me more than that one experience, because one data point is not very helpful. So like taking those final projects, thinking about them a little differently from not just trying to get through them and like skate through to the end of the semester, but really focus on what it is that you're trying to do. Some helpful advice that I've gotten is that nobody's going to stick up for you and advocate for you better than yourself. So something that I do is I keep a running list. My company does yearly reviews with a manager. But all year, anytime I do something cool or outside of my exact job description or learn something or take a class, I write it down. So then at annual review time, it's really easy for me to reference that back and just list out all those things and then either ask for promotion or, you've got that in your back pocket to say, I've spent X hours this year trying to learn this new skill, and I'd really like to get into that. I feel prepared for it now. How can you help me get there? And really kind of separating out what you do and don't like about things. And I think finding out what you don't like in a professional environment can be just as helpful as finding out what you do. And when I say like the whole environment, like, do you like wearing formal clothes versus like business casual versus whatever you want? Is it important for you to dress how you do in all of the rest of your life at work? And then things like, do you want to be sitting at a computer all day or not? Do you want to be on, do you prefer to have meetings or work independently? Like taking all of those things, all of those data points and trying to understand better, because it's, I think the sum of all of those parts plus doing what you care about that really make it what it is.
I guess for me, I had to go to training, and a lot of the stuff that I learned I didn't learn in school. But a lot of, for me, it's very personal, the sort of stuff that I wasn't told about myself that is like in my everyday work life. And so for me, I'm more masculine presenting, and I'm, I fit into this little groove where men feel like they can understand me more, I think. And so I had a lot of anxiety about being the only girl and being a minority in that respect. But I didn't realize that I kind of did have a little bit of an advantage in that as well. It's like I could kind of fit in without being one of them, and I could talk to them, and we could see eye to eye, even though there is that disparity. And it's kind of a weird thing to have realized about myself as a person in a career, as an adult, I guess you would call it. It's like I get to kind of reap the benefits of like on the surface that guys get to have in a weird way. So I don't know. It's not a technical answer, but it's like a realization that it's not going to be so bad if I can assert myself and I can just talk to them like I would talk to anybody. You know, they're people, and they'll hear you. Whether they want to listen or not is up to them. But I guess it's just not as I've gotten it pretty easy, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, compared to other people. So yeah, I don't know. I get off track. I'm sorry. I don't remember what the question was.
Can I add something? Murphy, you said something there that struck another idea. I think probably most people feel that they didn't learn what they do in their job in school directly. It is really the application of the types of thinking. And for me, I think the most impactful thing was really suffering through the first couple months of my job, of really feeling like I was thrown in the deep end and like, okay, you just have to figure this out. And so I just started Googling everything. And then I learned to be a software developer through Google, basically, and kind of was self-taught. And there are, what's that?
Your parents. I said, you Google for yourself and your boss and like Google.
Exactly. Yeah. And you'll get good at Googling things and like looking things up. But that actually that brought the most confidence for me was, oh, okay, no one really knows what's going on, but I know that I know that I can figure it out. I know that I can get in there and at least figure out enough pieces to ask the next right question, to pull in the next right person and like drive this progress. So I think that's an important one to keep in mind, is nobody expects you to know things. It's, can you figure it out?
Right. Are you teachable? And yeah, as long as you can sort it out by the end of the day, that's what your job becomes, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your honesty on the spot. Really appreciate it. So probably you've all had a mentor, a champion, an advisor in your past that helped you get to where you are now. Or maybe you've played the role of a mentor or a champion or advisor for someone else. Can you give us any advice for developing these mentor relationships? And then, how have they helped you in your career?
I got to talk about my current boss earlier and how great she is. So I'm trying to think of a few other examples. I've actually had a not so great experience with a mentor. Within one of my early roles graduating, my mentor ended up causing me to file a sexual harassment clause that kind of came out of nowhere. And that isn't defining to what I do now or the way that I work with people anymore. So I don't dwell on it that much. But I think it's important to keep your walls up when you're first being mentored by someone when you're fresh out of school, because we are wide-eyed, eager to learn, eager to listen to whatever anyone who has more experience than us is to say, to give us experience. And it's, I think, really easy to trust those people and be pushed into an uncomfortable position. So you have to follow your gut sometimes. Like in the beginning of our startup, we have maybe 2 or 3 people that have company credit cards, right? And so you don't have to necessarily file expense reports or do the traditional things that you would at big corporations or even universities that you have to track your process all along the way. And so it's easy to kind of say, well, this is kind of a work expense, or it's easy to say, well, we may not have to get that project done at the exact timeline. We can just text our boss, you know? And so every situation requires a little bit of your own gut instinct. And so I would say no matter how great your mentor is or who you end up being placed with in the future, that you should always kind of keep true to who you are and the things that you've already learned and your instincts. But that's just one situation. I've had a lot of other really great mentors, and it's not even necessarily someone that guided me through a specific project or a specific time period in my life. Just somebody that when I look to, I'm like, that was a really great example of the person that I want to be. So if you don't feel like you have a BFF boss that you can call or mentor that you can call on speed dial or something like that, it's still a mentor to me if you can ask them a question about professional development or a specific project that you're working on. But yeah, my boss now is really great, and we have really different backgrounds, but can see eye to eye and bounce ideas off of each other. And that's another thing that I think is exciting to talk to your mentor about is you are the new, the fresh, the innovative, you know all the things about technology that they might not know about. So whether it's a male or a female, they look to you equally as much as you look to them, right? So keep that confidence in yourself that you're around for a reason and you have new things to share as well. So it's not that they are God and you are learning everything. It's definitely a two-way relationship. And I continue to Google really random things for my bosses. And let me tell you, if you know how to work Google Docs, they find you very valuable. If you know how to unmute yourself on Zoom, all of a sudden you are really valuable, you know? And so, I mean, like, we're going to continue to see stuff like that where you need the mentor and they need you, and it's going to be a good working relationship. But going back just a second to the last question, Maggie, I have a yay folder where I keep any email correspondence from, like, people don't compliment you or use a bunch of exclamation marks or something like that, but it'll be like, thanks to Nikki for this project. That made my day. That is all I need. You know, I put it in my yay folder for when I don't have a great day. I'm like, that one time when someone said thank you, that is what I go to. And not everybody's like that. Maybe you don't need a yay folder. Maybe you have all the confidence in the world, but you find what you need to make you happy. And then the other thing I was thinking about from that last question was how daunting professional work can be in terms of like the timelines of projects that you're working on, especially if you're working in consulting or something like that. In school, you have like a test coming up and the deadline, right? Or even if you have a huge class project and it takes the entire semester, at least you have the semester, you're done, you can move on. You have to appreciate, I think, the little wins from big projects of being in the professional world. So you might have a project that is truly going to last you like the entire time that you're with a company, or 5 years or something like that. So you have to kind of figure out exactly what is going to take the little wins for you or the simple accomplishments, and you have to create your own timeline and stuff like that. So it's things about making your everyday manageable. So yay folders, writing your own journal, putting little wins, having mentors, stuff like that. Because yeah, the adulting world it can be challenging and difficult.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, the project work I was doing in undergrad was around, like, if you zoom out, the minutia of it, I didn't enjoy. The day-to-day I didn't enjoy. So it wasn't a right fit for me. But zooming out and thinking about the big picture, we were trying to figure out like other stars that could support life around them and what the habitable zone looks like. And they're like, that is so cool. And so I think, to Nikki's point, anytime that you get an opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, how is this Excel spreadsheet helping what we're trying to do? What even are we trying to do? I think those can be really important. And that's a great way to build mentorship and relationships too, is to say, hey, can we get a coffee? I'm trying to figure out like how what I'm doing is connected to the bigger picture and really stay focused. But I think as women, if you're trying to seek out a female mentor, I think it's an easy icebreaker to say, hey, I admire your work and I would love to hear how you got where you are today, or something as an easy icebreaker. So I think you can kind of blame it on, whatever characteristic. We do those annual reviews and I'll be like, for the sake of my self-feedback form, do you have any, and it's just an easy icebreaker to start that conversation, which can be a little bit awkward of like, but I think just being clear about what you're interested in. Say, hey, I noticed you did this work on this project, or, you've worked in supply chain before and I'd like to get going there. Could you tell me about your experience? And just set up some, casual, coffee type conversations, and then see who you click with. And you don't have to force it if it's not, if it's uncomfortable or not the right thing. There's no commitment there. You don't go into a relationship saying, you are now my mentor. Although there are some formal structures for mentorship in professional environments. Like we have partner advisors. So everybody in Clarkston has a partner who is kind of in their corner, which is great to have a little bit of that formal structure, but then you can talk to them as much as you want. So I think just some small tactical things is set up time with someone, ask, put a couple questions in the invite and say, I'd love to know how you got where you are today, or, what sort of learning you did to get into this, or if you have specific questions, great. If not, just giving them an idea of what the conversation is about helps. And then at the end, if it's something you want to continue, say, hey, this was really helpful. Would you mind meeting again in in the next quarter, or, 6 months from now, and catching up? And I'd love to share progress with you later on, and go ahead and set a date then and put it on the calendars. And then you can kind of slowly build that relationship if it is clicking.
I guess just kind of going off of that too, with how you find that connection with someone, it's not always going to be there. And I find that when it is there, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It's just, you can kind of give someone your truth in that moment. Say you're really struggling with a class, and you just need someone to hear you say, I hate this class, and I need just that person to say, you just need them to say, it's okay to hate the class. It's the small part of the big goal, and you can do it. Like, you can push through this. Maybe that's the kind of mentor you need, is that motivating voice of reason. At least that's what I found that I needed in school. I was a frequent at Dr. Burris's and Dr. Hester's offices, where I would just go in there and just let loose and just like say what happened that day, and they would listen to me with pretty neutral faces. Usually there's a sense of, oh, there she goes again. But it was an easy relationship. And I think once you find something like that, where you can just kind of fall into it, and it's not forced, and you don't feel like you're wasting their time, or you don't feel like what they're saying is valuable to you. It's just, it goes, and it's the best kind of mentorship. But I also with FAST have a forced mentor, which is nice to have as well. It's more professional, and it's less like I want to rant about my boss kind of thing. And it's more like, okay, so how are you feeling about your job at the 2-year mark, and sort of like checking in to see where you are on the scale of like, am I where I should be at this point in my career, sort of thing. That's equally as valuable. I kind of like having both, where I can have references to different things in that respect through my mentors. yeah, I think that just being honest is the root for mentorships, and like finding that person is just, if they can hear what you're saying and they can tell you not necessarily what you need to hear, but like they know how to motivate you over time. That's the beauty of a mentorship, I think.
Thank you so much to our panelists. It's great to see you all. I think we have a invitation to get any students to ask questions if you have any in the chat, or just speak up. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it back over to Laura.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, if any students, we have a couple minutes left, so if any of y'all have any questions for our panelists, definitely let us know.
Laura, the last thing I was going to say is something that I didn't realize until maybe my last year of school, and then I kind of carried that into my professional experience, is the concept of working smarter and not harder. It can be very tempting, especially in the corporate world, to just take as many meetings as possible. You know, if you're in a meeting, it looks like you're busy, you have a lot on your calendar, there's a lot in your inbox. But then if you take a step back and look at the stuff that Maggie was talking about, like an Excel sheet, is anything actually getting done? That should be your end goal, is actually making progress in whatever role you end up being in. So I think there's a lot of pressure in school if you're trying to excel or being overachiever and things like that, that it just looks, if you're working really hard, is just doing a lot of stuff, but really you can be a little bit smarter about it and intentional about what roles you take on and what projects you take on, and use your time really wisely, because that's going to be where you see that's where I've seen the best results.
That's really good advice, Nikki. I think there is a culture of the busier you are, the more productive you're being, and the more important you are, or, you know, so.
Yeah, especially when you're home right now and your bed is the same place that you get work done and sleep done. So it's like, oh, I could probably send out a few more emails, but the boundaries are important. Yeah.
How have you found is the best way to kind of establish those boundaries for you?
I personally have a really just fun hobby of working out, and that helps me end my workday. So if I sign up for a workout class, sorry, my phone is not in that workout class. You know, I'll get back to you afterwards if I miss you, but that's the kind of the cutoff to my traditional workday. It helps me remain on a schedule. But I mean, we all still, I still check my email, and we'll get back to things later at night. It helps me kind of prepare for the next day. But yeah, that's my cutoff of the real work day has ended. And that was same thing when I was working from home. I would maybe look at like a Peloton class. There was like a 3-month free trial for Peloton during the beginning of quarantine. So I said, someone's going live at 6 o'clock. That's where I'll be.
Yeah, it's good to have that solid cutoff time, isn't it?
Yeah, I bribe myself to sit at my desk. I'll like get, you know, a nice coffee and a candle going and a blanket, and I'm like, just get in there, sit at your desk, and then you're fine. Like, but if I'm looking at my bed or the TV or the pantry with snacks, it's not going to go well. So your physical surroundings can make a big difference. Yeah. I saw a question about where we can discover internships. I don't know about, like, I'm sure there's some good centralized resources for this sort of thing, but I think just looking at types of companies that you're interested in, or types of roles, and Googling, like, I know my company does an internship once a year. So every year they're looking for college people to come. And then that's actually, you know, we love to get great interns who we then can offer a job when the time comes a year or two later. So I think just look at different types of roles that you might be interested in, and then just go on their websites and email someone and say, hey, are you doing internships? I will say ours was canceled this year with COVID. So, you know, another bad thing about this year, but ask the question, say, hey, I'm interested. This looks like a great place to work. Do you have any internships? And put your name out there.
Sarah, I'm looking at a question about the way you dress and present yourself, and it kind of takes me back to what Maggie mentioned a little while ago in terms of being really intentional about who you choose to work for. So one of the internships that I had, I was specifically told not to wear a pair of pants that I wore again. It was just like, they were pink pants. And me now, I wear like black everything. I'm like, why did I even own pink pants before? But that was my jam when I was in college. And it just didn't fit in with the corporate world. They asked me to dress a little bit more muted, stand out a little bit less. And that ultimately made me decide that a future opportunity there wasn't the right fit for me, because it wasn't just like a single person. It was a cultural in general that I wasn't necessarily wanting to be a part of. But fashion wise, I think you can always figure out a way to stick to kind of the guidelines and then be yourself, right? So if I have to wear business professional every day, maybe I found a rocking jean jacket and I'm like, you know what, I've got all the appropriate like business professional attire on, but I wear this jean jacket and this is my jam. Or in the startup culture, let me tell you, the funkier the outfit, like the cooler you are. And I guess I'm not that funky either. So sometimes I'll just pick out like a uniform of type, you know, if you kind of figure out like what's your style and make that your uniform. But I do sometimes just completely transparently just morph into what I feel like will give me the most confidence, right? So maybe it's not the way that I personally would dress, but when I reflect on what I want to be focusing on when I'm at a networking event or in an interview or something, if I know I'm wearing the right thing to fit in, then I know that I'm not thinking about anything except just like my skills and what I'm talking about. So I guess you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons of staying true to yourself and fitting into whatever environment you're going into. But if they care that much about it, that's a little bit of a red flag to me. You should be able to show up with appropriate attire on and have them focus.
I think if you're the only woman in the room anyway, or, you know, one of few, then like, who cares? You're already potentially dressing different than everyone in the room anyway. So stand out, do your thing. You know, it may get you more attention, but I've found that to be a positive in certain situations of like, yeah, your eye's going to come to me first and I'm going to tell you what I think. So it can be, you know, it can be a benefit in certain situations, but to Murphy's point earlier, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the difference between being treated as a woman or being treated as new. I think I was very sensitive about that when I first started. And so there's some things that you could like, don't be on your phone at work. I had to stop. I had to make myself stop touching my hair because I like have curly hair. And so I would twirl it a lot. And I was like, I look like a little girl. So there's certain tactical things that just to be professional, I think can go a long way to make you not seem younger. But then anything that you're embracing your womanhood and authenticity and like, this is who I am, like wear a bold earring, like wear cool shoes, do your thing, do who you are. And like Nikki said, if that doesn't jive with your work environment, then you know, think about which one is more important to you, and you can make cuts wherever it feels best.
Yes, and Murphy, I'm looking to you on this last note. First impression in terms of like the way that you look the first time they meet you, when they see you the second time, no surprises after that, right? Like Murphy, I have the exact same hat, and one time I wore it during a call, and people were like, "What do you do? Like, what do you have on?" But if I would have worn it the freaking first time that I talked to them, nobody would have said anything after I wore it after that, right?
Right.
So let them get over the shock of you putting a hat on your head and then get over it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an odd perspective, but I wear what all the guys at work wear. So it was a shock in a different way. why is she wearing our clothes? You know? And so, yeah, I mean, you're going to shock them in one way or another. And so as long as you're doing it in a way that makes you confident and I think in general, it's more like wearing bright colors and, you know, having statement pieces than wearing skirts that are too short. Like, I think we're at a point where, you know, the focus is on your work first, but then you're also you, and you got hired for being you as well. You have a personality, and like at least with my job description, half of my job is being a consultant, you have to have that, like, that part that people want to confide in you, and that, you know, I don't get this or whatever. Like, you have to be approachable. And so, yeah, wearing slacks and a button up is not my go-to, but it's my uniform. And so, I just choose to wear the men's side of the uniform as opposed to the women's. If that's, you know, that's a a different kind of prejudice, I guess. But
let's have a whole other panel about how to dress, because where I could talk about this forever. Like keeping steel-toe boots and tennis shoes in your car. Like tons of women do that if they want to still wear their high heels, or what you wear in like a poor part of Appalachia versus a trip to the downtown Louisville. You know, I could talk about something like this forever. Great question.
That was an awesome question. And let's get together and let's continue this conversation if y'all want to. We can absolutely talk all day. So I'm looking at the time, and I wanna wrap us up by just saying that all three of these companies represented today, AppHarvest, Clarkston Consulting, and Fast Enterprises, they all have internship opportunities and job opportunities. So take a look at these websites, go connect with these folks on LinkedIn. These connections can be so important to you as other women in STEM. So definitely reach out if you're interested in chatting more with them. I'm sure they would be open to it. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. Y'all provided some awesome advice and really inspired me for sure, even though I'm not in STEM. Just the advice you shared was helpful to any woman out there doing their thing. So thank you all so much. And yeah, reach out to me. I will put my email in the chat if any students need any questions answered about anything. You'll see that there are a couple email addresses for some panelists in there. Reach out. Join me in thanking them as well. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for joining us.